Zamtrios, Duramboros, and Dodogama. These are the hardest monsters in all of Monster Hunter. The thought of attacking any of the three is simply incomprehensible. They're far too cute, and as such, I'm going to be listing all of them as immortal. Joking aside, Monster Hunter as a series has some absolutely brutal fights, but what are the hardest based monsters? The biggest struggles, the tallest walls, the ones that I'll still happily include just because I'm salty. I'm looking at you, Basil Geese! So without further ado, here are the 10 hardest monsters in Monster Hunter.
Number 10.
I love gold!
Ah, Silver Rathalos. I remember the pain you caused me with your absolute refusal to ever touch your tiny birdie feet to the earth, you inexorable excuse for a flying wyvern. Nobody likes fighting you. Silver Rathalos' unending aerial assault is one of the most annoying things out there. Obviously, things like ranged weapons can manage better as they actually get a bit of damage off, but for melee, it's pretty much all you can get in edgewise to wildly swing at the tail. And that is before we even talk about how annoying it is to dodge the faster and deadlier attacks that Silver has in comparison to regular Rathalos. Between the poison and the fire, if you get hit once, you'll absolutely struggle to find an opening to take care of your health bar for the rest of the fight. The exception to all of Silver Rathalos' difficulty, however, is flash bombs. On a 4-player hunt, you can flash Silver Rathalos out of the air 20 plus times, which just makes the entire fight a boring and tedious experience that, while not difficult, is just not fun. Silver Rathalos is very hard when you fight him fairly. However, the ability to completely neuter his offenses makes this fight sit down at the lowly little number 10.
Number 9.
Pow, right in the kisser. 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 Pow, right in the kisser.
Raging Brachydios! The Brachydios who is just a little bit, less happy, I guess. Let's back out of our Monster Hunter player vision for a second and just see this monster for what it is. A kangaroo-like dinosaur with a near impenetrable shell and the ability to spread explosive goo all over your body whether you like it or not. As if that wasn't enough, once you get to Raging Brachydios over normal Brack, not only is he bigger, not only does his slime explode faster on the floor, but now the slime on his shell reacts to you being close to it, sort of like a fancy car, but unlike the fancy car, its response is to explode. Meaning, when you do finally get to go on the offensive against this powerhouse of a monster, when you find an opening, you can only stay in that opening for so long without being blown away. He's tanky as all hell, he's faster than anything his size should move, and now he has an anti-infantry system built into his shell. Raging Brachydios' moveset is absolutely chock full of area-affecting attacks. With most monsters, you can get away with dodging late in an attack once you see its direction. But with Brack, you have to really know his attack patterns, because if you don't, you will get absolutely abused while explosions start coming out of the ground in places across the room.
Number 8.
Kirin is a prime example of what happens when you let a bunch of game directors turn a unicorn into a literal monster. Kirin is one of the more interesting monsters on this list from a difficulty perspective. For a number of monsters, the difficulty comes from an affinity for big, singular hits or unpredictable attacks, but Kirin's individual attacks aren't capable of one-shots, and all of his attacks have clear patterns. What makes Kirin difficult is a combination of speed and the element/status his attacks are charged with. That's right, Kirin's ability to paralyze you means being hit by one attack is more often going to be getting hit by 2 attacks and dying. If that wasn't bad enough, Kirin's lightning attacks also apply the thunder debuff, making you more likely to get stunned. Because if there was one more thing this fight needed, it was another reason to make 2 hits in a row instead of 1. Now, honestly, my experience might be a bit tainted from all the times I've had to fight Kirin naked, but all the voices of other people in the community echoing the difficulty of the horse with no name makes me feel pretty confident in putting Kirin at a respectable number 8.
Number 7.
Tigrex, but slightly more difficult. You know weapon sharpness, right? And how us hunters are so big a fan of it, we even keep our hammers sharp. Well, what if a monster walked in and said, "Fuck you, you're not penetrating my arms, and I'm not gonna tell you why"? Well, I don't know about you, but I don't like that. The base version of Tigrex is known for being relentlessly aggressive to the point of attacking a literal mammoth, and Grimclaw takes this to a whole other level. He's incredibly quick with attacks that hit like a freight train, and by the way, he does still have the damaging roar that makes it incredibly hard to find time to heal. For his speed, he is comparatively quite large as well, meaning to dodge his hits, you have to cover even more ground to escape. However, the thing that makes Grimclaw a bit more reasonable is that he sticks to fairly noticeable patterns. He has a slight wind-up to a lot of his attacks, little hidden warnings for your brain to turn to your advantage. And while he is pretty unforgiving to be hit by, he isn't the hardest monster in the game to avoid being hit by. That comes later.
Number 6.
That smells great.
What happens when you eat another member of your species? Do you get stronger? I don't know, but Deviljho do. If you want to talk about monsters that are bigger than they should be for their speed, Savage Deviljho also absolutely fits that bill, though at the other end of it. Savage Deviljho is absolutely massive, and as with regular Joe, the majority of his attacks are massive sweeping feats of flexibility that no one would expect from a former cucumber. He starts the fight essentially as an enraged Deviljho, but bigger. It is an understatement to say that as a base, fighting a perma-enraged monster is super difficult. An enraged is when you're supposed to play safely, and with a monster as big and beefy as this, where are you gonna find your opening? How are you gonna topple this hungry hippo? Well, he's more of a dinosaur, really. Well, wait until he gets enraged, and then you get to deal with faster Deviljho, but now even faster, more damaging Deviljho, but also now more damaging than that. And oh hey, did I mention the fact that enraged Savage Deviljho has a larger and more dangerous dragon breath? No? Would you like more? Well, that's too bad, because that's about all that makes him difficult, but holy pickle jar, Batman, this angry cannibal will tear your face off for hours.
Number 5.
Ah, the great sword with a monster attached to it. Hello, Hellblade. Gladness has always been a bit of a kryptonite monster for me, much like Deviljho was originally, but a lot of that has to do with recognizing patterns. Just like Savage Deviljho, Hellblade Gladness has the advantages of big sweeping attacks and massive size while still managing to be surprisingly zippy. But then on top of that, he has new blast attacks which will just explode you fucking miles away from his tail, which should be safe for fuck's sake. But then he still has his regular fire, which while not too harmful on its own, can cause you an absolute ton of pain if you get hit, as finding the time to put out a fire in this fight can be quite hard. The amount of times I've seen that goddamn tail in his mouth and thought to myself, お前はもう死んでいる。何? Is mind-boggling. But one thing I can definitely say is that Hellblade Gladness is a monster that gets much easier as you memorize his patterns. Don't get me wrong, he ain't no great Macau even then, but he is all about hitting those attacks that one-shot you and much less about endless combos of attacks, and as such is one of the easier monsters to take slow and carefully. Hellblade is probably even the monster that took me the most amount of time to kill the first time, entirely due to fainting. Well then why isn't he number 1? He isn't number 1 because I just don't think he's the hardest monster. Hellblade absolutely deserves his spot on this list, but just because he took the longest doesn't make him the hardest.
Number 4.
例えば、ときめくもの。
When you touch an item that sparks joy, your body would respond this way.
キュン。
On the contrary, when you touch an item which does not spark joy, you would feel
ズン。
The Black God, the Tyrant of Fire, a Cantor! Those names tell you exactly what kind of experience you're in for, except for a Cantor that doesn't actually tell you a whole lot if you don't know him. You know a monster is serious when its quest is set in the Ingle Isle. We're on a real streak here with our size to speed ratio reasoning, so let's keep it going. A Cantor is absolutely gigantic, to the point where it feels like he's halfway between most monsters and this siege monsters. But his fight is not a siege, and he will show that to you instantly when, unlike any siege monster, a Cantor will charge at you like no tomorrow. And then just when you think you're free of his tyranny, ready for a break to heal, here comes a crazy giant laser from across the zone. And unlike other beam monsters, a Cantor actually does seek out corners of the room and then purposefully sweep the beam so that it covers as much of the area as physically possible. And if this wasn't enough, his roars also do a ton of damage to anyone unlucky enough to be in range, which, while not hugely threatening by itself, has the major downside of doing damage to you while also flinching you. The majority of a Cantor's attacks won't quite one-shot someone in appropriate gear, but if you get roared at and then hit before you can heal, because you were flinched, you're probably dead. Imagine if Nergigante mated with Zoramagdaros, and then the child was raised and trained by Gravios and Tigrex. That's a Cantor.
Number 3.
Sorry, it wasn't working. I was trying to communicate with the Furiousrachet. Well, it appears I was speaking the correct language. The Furiousrachet is incapable of understanding anything, as he's just far too angry to think. That anger transfers directly through to his moveset, where a lot like regular Rajang, he will attempt to do nothing but bash your face in. Except Furiousrachet, he'll do it harder and faster, and for a longer amount of time. Sort of like if Kanye West resided in the Dragon Ball universe. Like Savage Deviljho, Furiousrachet always exists in the enraged state of his regular counterpart, meaning he is blunt and buff and can make his arms solid as a rock whenever he feels like it. Speaking of rocks, he throws them. They're big and they're painful. Furiousrachet can easily two-shot a hunter, and in some cases even one-shot them, which would be a little scary on a big slow monster. Furiousrachet, however, is one of the fastest creatures here. I mean, he hunts Kirans for fuck's sake. I know a lot of what I'm saying is like I'm just talking about regular Rajang, but that sort of is why Furious is so hard, isn't it? He is a Rajang, which is already super hard, but he is a Rajang on steroids. Not literally, I don't think at least.
Number 2.
You did it to yourself, you little bastard.
Yes, people, that is how a Bloodbath Diablos is created, which explains why they hate literally every living thing, and the only thing they can forge any sort of bond with is sand. Originally, Diablos is generally agreed upon to be one of the biggest early walls in a Monster Hunter game for a new player. He is pretty aggressive and large, with attacks that will take you completely off guard the first time you see them. Bloodbath takes that and runs with it, and keeps running until his weirdly shaped horn runs directly through a living creature. Bloodbath is more aggressive, larger, and distinctly more upset than regular Diablos. Furiousrachet doesn't even know what anger is when compared to this beast, or else he'd be called Raging Rajang, because that would sound hilarious. Every single hit from this beast will either kill you or put you so close to death that a light windfall could finish you off, essentially removing any comfortability that Valor mode gives to hunters who like to be little bitches, myself included. Along with that absolute power, Bloodbath is blessed with enhanced speed and even has a sort of power-up thing where he prepares to do some of the fastest attacks I've actually ever had the displeasure of trying to dodge. And then, of course, when the Bloodbath gets weak, and more than likely, you're out of healing, the fight gets harder. Bloodbath becomes so angry that its veins heat up the dried blood on its skin to create a steam blast on certain attacks, which, as expected, do tons and tons of damage. The crux of this, and the main reason that Bloodbath is number 2 on this list, is patterns. Bloodbath is a brutal fight, but if you learn Bloodbath well, you can get through an entire fight not getting hit, just reacting to the telegraphs correctly. It'll be difficult, don't get me wrong. You'll probably try to make more than one deal with the devil himself to finish the fight faster, but it's doable. And as a monster, he is killable. I would like to, however, point out that I have not fought Extreme Bloodbath yet. And while I still wouldn't count an extreme version of anything for a part of this list, I imagine Extreme Bloodbath is going to make me wish that I put this monster first.
Number 1.
Ice, Dragon, Fire, and Lightning. These 4 elements can only be controlled together by one monster. His name is Alatreon. The difficulty of Alatreon can be described in a single scenario. Close your eyes. Picture a dark, warm place.
Ooh,
now
that's
imagine
quite nice.
you're on fire.
Wait, I don't want to imagine.
Well, and also really cold.
But how do I-
And he just got hit by a lightning bolt.
What is going on?
The main thing that makes Alatreon difficult and cool, because he is really cool, is the mixing of elements and status effects he will gift upon your poor, weak little hunter body. Lightning debuff makes you particularly easy to stun if you manage to survive getting hit by the lightning. The fire makes you roll and lose health constantly. Ice debuff makes it harder for you to roll, either to evade new attacks or put out the fire of the old ones, and then dragon debuff to, well, I guess if you use an elemental weapon, it is a minor inconvenience. The majority of Alatreon's attacks cover massive areas, and rather than set patterns around him like most elemental attacks from monsters, some of Alatreon's attacks will track the hunter down, making you actively run to avoid them, which may not sound like a massive problem, but when you get down to properly knowing how to fight a monster like this, these attacks are some of the only things that will get you, some of the only things that will surprise you and hit you. If his sheer elemental power wasn't intimidating enough, Alatreon's quite big, making his physical attacks take up a lot of space, and of course also hit like a truck. He's quite fast, meaning you have to be on your toes to avoid him, and as one of the Black Dragons, Alatreon is tanky as all hell, and is able to soak up damage from the most overpowered of weapons and shrug it off like it was nothing. Oh hey, did I mention that he likes to spend a lot of time in the air? That's right. To even hit him, you have to get past the fact that he will be in the air for about half of the fight, meaning melee weapons should always remember to bring popcorn. Remember, boredom is one of the biggest killers of hunters. All of these things combined, put against every other monster in the franchise, every other monster on this list, and with the weighting of the different reasons that I had and how significantly they affect your experience as a whole, this put Alatreon right at the top of my list. I'm Cotton Dinosaur, and these have been the most difficult monsters in Monster Hunter. Do you agree with my choices? Do you think your list is better? Tell me in the comments. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the little notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.